We delve into this podcast, a quick note from the sponsors. Now, the sponsors of this podcast is an amazing product that is formulated from a mature hops extract. And this extract is absolutely amazing at getting us to burn fat without losing any muscle. Now, visceral fat, which is that hidden fat that surrounds all our organs, including our heart and our liver, our intestines, our gallbladder, and can be linked to things like fatty liver disease, affects so many people. We all know there's an obesity crisis, but even if you're not obese or overweight, you can still have health conditions that are linked to visceral fat. And this mature hops extract is a simple product that is completely natural, very safe, no known side effects, that can simply be added to any drink once or twice a day, that can trigger activating brown fat adipose tissue to be burnt by the body, which increases the body's thermogenic response and helps us to burn fat smarter, not harder. So, at a time when every single chronic disease that we can think of is linked to excess weight, excess toxins stored in this visceral fat, and all the health conditions that are linked to it, who doesn't want to actually have a solution that's available to every single one of us that we can really start our weight loss journey today? It's about getting rid of that fat that's storing toxins in your body that is causing so many knock-on physical health problems, but also having a dramatic effect on your self-confidence and how you show up in the world. So if you want any more amazing detail, then look at the link below. You will, when you sign up for that link, you will get an email into your inbox which says burn fat smarter, not faster. If you don't see it within 5 minutes, check your spam. The details of how to contact me are in there or also in the description box below. Let's all really just start now. Don't wait to the new year. Let's set off getting our health to the next level. And the first place to start is by getting rid of that excess fat that is causing us so many issues. Now back to the podcast. So we missed one last week because I wasn't very work. I am back, everyone, as you know, with Bryce from Esoteric Atlanta, and we couldn't wait till Thursday this week because we missed our chat last week. We do coffee chats 1 week on my channel, 1 week on Bryce, and it is election day in the USA. Even though I'm from the UK, as you can tell, any new listeners from my accent, we've been, all these things, everything's linked now. We're not talking about the New World Order, global government, but we're talking about everything impacts everything else, like the butterfly effect. So before we dive deep, Bryce, what's happening in America? What can you update us on?
Well, I know for myself and a lot of the people I know on people that are on YouTube and not on YouTube, just friends, we're all nervous. I think we know that this is not about politics. This is a spiritual thing that's happening. And back when I was a kid, of course, we always, you know, I think all of us look back at our childhood and there's some enchantment to our childhood, which
Yeah.
maybe that was just that was just the perspective of a child. So, take it with a grain of salt, and all the Americans who are around my age can comment in the comment section. When we would have elections as a child, even before obviously we couldn't vote because we weren't 18, and our parents, we always knew who our parents were voting for. There was tension, but it wasn't like it is now. Like nobody had to barricade buildings. There was civilness. Like, if one side lost, they were good, they would capitulate, they would congratulate the winner, and then we would just move on. It wasn't life went on. But with this, I mean, I was telling you before we started, I'm exhausted right now. I've been talking to other people. It's like this dread of what's about to happen because we know that with, we'll say, the competition, just to keep the algorithms, that when you have a competition, the sporting people will say the two sports teams, they're not supposed to cheat. They're supposed to be referees that call that out. And we know the last competition that was very apparent that happened. And I think I know that for this competition, they've put up a lot more. There's a lot more people refereeing, we'll say, at the different. They're really trying to watch this now, but it's still very terrifying when one team is bound and determined to win at all cost. And if that team were to win, I think our life as we know it would absolutely cease to exist at this point. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to be careful with how I say
Yeah,
this. I don't wanna...
I think all our listeners know that we have to use this ridiculous code because the milestones about what we are and aren't allowed to say just change all the time and they employ it retrospectively. So
Yeah.
I wanted to pick up on the dread there because this is something you and I have been covering, discussing with each other off camera. I think there's a couple of really interesting things that you sent there, and it sort of resonates with how we grew up. The one thing I would say is in the UK, people wouldn't necessarily even know how their parents voted. It's just not something you discussed. And it's not that, when I say it's not that big a deal, the right to vote is a big deal, but it doesn't govern your life in the way
Right.
it seems to
Yeah,
in
right.
America. So, what I find really interesting when we're looking at the division that we've got now and the control systems that are in place is how all encompassing, how so many people from not just America, but from all over the world are focusing so much energy on the result of, say, this election and have really been doing so ever since 2016. Let's face it, it's been getting more and more, energetically and carrying all that dread. It's a pretty disastrous combination, isn't it? And how much of human attention is focused. If you, let's face it, if you're an evil genius on the dark side, being polite, what a genius way to get everyone from each side to focus all their attention and energy on this.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the big difference from when I was a kid to now is that when I was a kid, whether were on the red team or the blue team, you were all still Americans, and that was the most important thing, was that you were all Americans. And everybody, regardless of whether you agreed with the opposing team or not, you each had America's best, your country's best interest at heart. And if that's we talk about the moral compass. If your moral
Mm.
compass is the same, you want what's best, then regardless of whether something doesn't work or not, you're both going to work to fix it. And so I think that's why there was safety in the past, that we all felt like regardless, we're all Americans, we're all in this together. Well, at this point, and I think why 2016 became such a global phenomenon is because all of a sudden it became apparent that this was about pretty much shutting down free
Yeah.
enterprise for all of us.
Mm.
And that's and now it's at this point it's not just about Americans or English. It's not about it's like these factions against each other, and we're kind of caught in the middle as the people. And again, I'm trying to be careful how I say this. And you're right. And this speaking of like dread and stuff, you had sent me a brilliant podcast to listen to, which this woman basically what we're talking about is in fact the pinnacle of like traditional spirituality. People confuse spirituality of being like you're always at peace or there's always peace around you, but that's not the case. You have to be able to be at peace even when the world is falling apart.
Yeah.
And being able to...
Well, you keep freezing, Bryce. We've lost Bryce for the moment.
There, did I just lose you?
Yeah, we lost you. Yeah. Yeah, you dropped out.
No, that's not if that's not a sense of humor as to what's happening today.
And it keeps freezing actually, and we never have this problem when we're recording.
Now, I will say it could just typically be like, okay, so where the polling place for where I live in Fulton County, which Atlanta has multiple counties, but multiple polling places, as most cities do, where the midtown, it's like a block from where I live. So it could
Yeah.
be that the internet's kind of wonky because there's so many people over there right now in line. I mean, I think
Yeah.
the poll open at like 9 a.m. It's 9:16 now. So that could be why the internet is shaky right now. But
Yeah, so just bear with us, everyone. It doesn't matter if it freezes, we'll carry on, we'll stop start because this is just something we have to cope with. But
yeah.
I think that's such a good point because we were both listening to the Mel Robbins podcast on dread and looking at how to let go of what you can't control. And what we've just been discussing in combination with our community. So, everyone, when we're talking about this, we're not pretending that Bryce and I know any more than any of you do at all. As a community with all our listeners, I think we've all been evolving over the last particularly 4 years to really understand that this constant obsession, of course, it started in the lockdown when a lot more people were
Yeah.
listening to online content, of consuming information at the expense of getting on and living your life, is so damaging. And now so many people are just so engrossed in this situation. I mean, never before would anyone like me from the UK have even given any thought to your
Yeah.
election. But of course, once you start understanding about the globalist agenda, and it was all blatantly obvious, I'll just say in 2024, when everything was being rolled out in all our countries at the same time, using the same wording and the same propaganda, we now know that this isn't anything really like a normal
No.
competition.
There was a really great I'll just say Robert, or we'll say Bob K. You guys know who we're talking about because I actually got reprimanded on Instagram. I was telling you, Catherine, I didn't even know I was eligible to monetize my Instagram, but I found out I was because they sent me a notification because I shared a quote by him. That's how bad it's gotten, and that's what we're fighting for is like this crazy rules we're having to live under, which isn't freedom. But anyway, um, Bob K put out a great commercial. I can send it to you when we're done. And he literally, the way there, it's him, Tulsi, I won't say her last name, Mr. T, a bunch of people who are working together. And it talks about this spiritual conflict that we're in right now. You know, it's literally, are we going to be free? Or are we going to be enslaved? I mean, this is where this is the junction we're at, which obviously the law of one, if you guys, I reference that a lot. This is where we are with the law of one, with the polarities, where we've come to the end of the road on this planet and it's got to go in one direction or the other. And so that's where we are. We're at that fork in the road. And when it comes to not being things out of your control, I mean, this is such a prime example because this is a collective thing. It's not just one singular person. This is a collective karma that we're all in right now. It's not our singular karma, it's collective. And I was telling you, Catherine, it was a brilliant the way she was saying it because it literally, I feel like all of my years in India kind of were supposed to train me for this moment.
Mm.
And because the second sutra is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which is yoga, chitta, mind stuff, vritti, thoughts, and Nirodha had nothingness. So it translates to yoga, mind, stuff, thoughts, nothingness. And, you know, we see that wrongly translated as yoga is silencing the mind. Well, silencing something doesn't remove it. In
No,
fact, what you resist persists. So if you silence something, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But so what it's saying, even though we can't remove our mind or thoughts while we're in our body, is basically is that you have to be aware of your thoughts. And you have to be able to not let those thoughts dictate your peace and finding peace even in moments of turmoil. And that's not, and that gets confused a lot too. You know, we see that, and we're seeing that with the truther community as well, where and we see it in the yoga world too, where people get confused about action and inaction. Or like ahimsa is the first rule, which means nonviolence. And the reason why Patanjali picked nonviolence, ahimsa, instead of the word peace is because action does have to be taken. You can't just sit back and be like, oh, ho hum, I'm fine with everything. Basically, what it means is, you know, for us, we voted. We voted for Mr. T. We've got our protection. We've got our kind of, we've got a loose plan in case shit hits the fan. So we're doing things to protect ourselves. We're doing things to try to push it in the right direction, but we still have to be at peace with whatever outcome happens. And that's so
absolutely.
hard to do. And when I say be at peace, whatever outcome happens, now obviously if it is apparent that they have rigged it or if they fumbled the ball, we'll say, trying to the algorithms, they fumbled the ball and we need to collect the ball and course correct the game, then in the yogic philosophy, you wouldn't sit back and be like, oh, ho hum, they fumbled the ball and now we're just going to keep fumbling it because I need to accept it. No, you still try to course correct, but it's still
Absolutely, but it's how you do it.
yeah, and that non-violence. I'm so against vigilante violence because
Mm.
vigilante violence is not any better than the violence you perceive is happening. Now, when I say vigilante violence, I'm not meaning like in a split second having to defend yourself. That is not that is self-defense. But, and we see this like, I was actually thinking about the American Revolution because apparently they tell us astrologically what was happening then is also happening now. The two are mirroring each other. And it wasn't just America that was in a revolution. I mean, it started with the English Revolution
Hmm.
that happened like what, a couple centuries ahead, and that trickled over to the United States. And you have the Haitian Revolution, the French. There were all of these things happening all over the world that are also mirrored now. And I think now, because of the internet, we're able to connect with each other more than just sending letters via boats, via carrier pigeons, to actually
Exactly.
know what's going on. And I think about though, with because obviously I'm an American, so I know more about the American Revolution. I think about our founding fathers when they basically went about making us an independent country. They first tried to go the non-violent route. They wrote the Declaration of Independence, which has, I love modern terminology. They say it's the most epic breakup letter ever written. But in writing that, they were aware that there's always cause and effect, that there were going to be consequences for them writing that letter. And so then they prepared an army of basically colonists because they knew. So there was preparation, there was organization, there was no like rash, just go out and start fighting. There was actual understanding of where they were going. And that's so different. And so that's kind of, again, and we see a lot of and again, I see this in the yoga world too, where people think that they shouldn't, that they shouldn't get involved in things or say how they feel because they want to, oh, just let it be, let it be. That's the yogic way peace. Well, no, that's not the yogic way. Think about, I mean, I know there's speculation about Gandhi, but from what we know about Gandhi, let's think about Gandhi, what we've been told about him. He protested non-violently. He never raised a fist, but he protested. He did what he needed to do to try to free himself and his people. That's what we're doing right now on our YouTube channels. We're doing what we have to do. We're going to vote to try to peacefully take the power back, but we know that's probably not going to be peaceful. And so when conflict arises, it's being able to breathe into that and accept it for what it is and make the choice to continue to defend yourself in an organized way, but also being okay and understanding that whatever happens is going to happen. And so many, we see that in the truth of the world too, where so many people are like, oh, God's in control, it's fine. Well, yeah, God's in control, of course, but we still have to take action. We can't, but at the same time being at peace with what the outcome is.
Well, if
You know,
God was in control, God's also been in control of everything that's been happening up until this point. So you can't be
exactly,
selective about what he's been in control of. And we've also
exactly,
been given free will for a reason. And I think
exactly.
I agree with everything you said. And it all comes into the whole issue of how we as a species have been so manipulated to live in our headspace and get out of balance, get out of that connection with our environment. And when you've only got to look about how most humans now live, we're so disconnected from our environment. And the point of the matter is you can see it time and time again. It's such a cliche that the same thing can happen to different people, but how they view it will be completely different. And the only change is their mindset to it. So, with what you were saying, it's about not, you can accept that this is where we are and then redo your plans about what are you going to do about it. But if you do that from a calm, controlled, considered place where you really have got your critical thinking skills really tapped in, the results are going to be much better, because when we react from that place of fear, when we react rather than respond, it never goes well. It just doesn't
Never,
go well. Not
never.
unless you really are in a life or death situation, your adrenaline's kicked in, you get the hell out of there. But for most of the situations, and I think we talk about loosh, and most people watching this on our channels will know what we mean. But this energy that we're putting into all this, I would really ask people to be asking, what can they do to really look at controlling their energy, not suppressing it, but controlling it in a more constructive way so that we're not feeding the outcome that we don't want, and we're not depleting ourselves to the fact that we then go into victim mode or fawn mode.
Well, I think also we've done videos a long time ago on toxic positivity within the spiritual world. And that's something that I think we're seeing also in the truther community as well, where we see people like don't even want to contemplate, they might feel like I'm nervous right now. And I can say, yeah, I'm nervous. There's nervousness there. But
Exactly.
I've learned how to lean into that. And so when we talk about fear and fear taking, I think it's only when we try to suppress the fear and pretend like it's not there that it becomes overwhelming. But to be able, and that's a lot of spirituality is actually leaning into that. It's like, spirituality is actually looking at the shadow, looking at the darkness, because only then can you bring it to the light. So for people, especially in the United States right now, to know a lot, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and of course my friends who aren't even on YouTube, everybody's nervous, but just
Mm.
being able to sit down and be like, okay, I'm a little scared right now, and I have a reason to be scared, and just
Yeah.
accepting that, saying, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's not fine. It's just going to build. And that's when you start to react instead of respond. And I love how you said that, respond instead of react. So part of that in the yoga world, in the healing world, and we've talked about this off camera too, Catherine, it's rough because you have to lean into that. You have to go there and you have to think, okay, this is why. I know for me, I struggle with anxiety, which I've talked about. So when I get to catastrophe thinking, I do the opposite. I sit down and be like, well, what's the worst case scenario? And it's never, I can then start to control my nervous system. But for this, we do have a reason. And to accept that, to lean into that, to know it's there so that you now have control over it. You now have, it's like if you're in a relationship with somebody and you find out that person's been cheating on you. Now, at first, you're going to be angry and upset. But if you sit there with it for a moment and you accept it, you can calmly walk away from the relationship by just accepting it. And so I hope that makes sense. Like
Oh, it
I
makes so much sense. And you've just reminded me of something. There's so many people talk about fear being false evidence appearing real. And to me, that's a classic example of toxic positivity because fear can be real. If you're about to be abducted or you're about to have a car crash or, the cable car thing's gonna, but, there's so many evidences when fear is ill, and fear is a really important survival mechanism.
yeah,
What's not is when we get fear in our heads about these things that we can't control and they're not our problems to worry about. And let me clarify that a bit. When I mean not our problems, doesn't mean that we're saying, sod you, it's your problem, I'm not going to care about anyone else.
yeah.
I'm not talking about that at all. But going back to the good old thing that my grandma used to say to me, well, look, if you're worried about something or you're feeling nervous, whichever adjective you might choose to do, can you do something about it? And if the answer is yes, well, let's do your breathing exercises, do your stretching, shake out that tension, whatever it might be for you. Use whatever tools you've got in your toolkit to get yourself in a rational state of mind so that you can choose to do something about it. If you can't do something about it, there's no point you worrying about it because worrying's not going to get you anywhere. So sometimes these good old fashioned sayings that our grandmas used to say, but just saying that all fear is false evidence appearing real is actually not true because some fear is real. If you take the current situation, there are some pretty dire consequences if a certain result happens, or if people lose their rational or fall for the propaganda in so many different ways. So, yes, fear can be false. It can be something in your head that isn't going to happen, but it also can be rational. And just as you said at the start, by suppressing that, that's where the real trauma builds up in your body and makes us more close-minded, less open to have these objective opinions, and to really, as you and I are one of our favorite quotes, the Aristotle, being able to entertain an idea without being attached to it. You can't do that if you're caught in that survival mode. You've got to have the tools in your toolkit to keep you in a rasher so you can make the best possible decisions.
It's that observation, right? That's what we talk about in yoga too, being the watcher and
Mm.
observing. And if you're able to take yourself, and I think even just in day-to-day situations, if you're in a contentious place, being able to remove yourself and look at it from both sides. So you're observing everything. So then you can make a better decision about which direction to go. I mean, yeah, and fear is very, very, very real. Because I think about like myself here in America, and I'm sure same for you, Catherine, in the UK, we've already paid. I mean, I know our viewers know we've paid there's been consequences for what we our content. But I think there's so many consequences that we haven't even mentioned.
So many. And actually, it's really interesting you should say that because I was thinking about that on my dog walk today. And I was like, wow, the treatment makes me quite emotional to think about it. And I'm thinking, this is us, let alone if you're really in a public position,
Yeah.
what these people go through, the lies, the nastiness, but the amount of people that I thought were good friends that have completely shit on you from a height for actually stating an opinion when you're not even asking them to agree with your opinion. You're
Right.
just withholding your right to have an opinion and to actually, you and I have had loads of people on our channels that we don't agree with their
Yeah.
opinion, but as David Icke says, and as the guy from London Real says, you withhold their right to have a different opinion.
Yeah.
And they don't need us to agree with their opinion. It's ridiculous.
No.
And I think the consequences I was speaking to a really amazing lady. I won't give her name at the moment, but she's one of a serious health professional in Australia who's had her license taken away for standing up and really talking about the children. And the consequences on these people for the actions they've done. And I think this is where we have to, at times like this, like today, when there's emotions are running so high at everyone, pausing and taking a breath and saying, yeah, but what really matters about this? What are the real issues? Put my ego aside, put my pride aside. What are the real issues? What are we all fighting for? What is America fighting for? What is the world fighting for? And fighting might be a bad choice of word, but standing up for and
Yeah.
realizing that we're this close to having it taken away from us for good.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer, but the reality is I've really, we paid heavily with financial
Mm,
income. I've never struggled this much. Like I mean, we just get hit all the time and get
mm,
our
mm,
opportunities taken from us for speaking out, and having a different opinion from the established narrative. And, I've had to consider that because technically you and I, Catherine, in the United States, because of the amount of subscribers we have, we're technically considered public people. I always laugh at that because I don't feel
mm.
like
No.
it's me, but that technically, legally speaking, by our sub numbers, we are public people. And so I've thought about it, if worst case scenario, the NWO were to come in and take over, the likelihood of me being one of the people rounded up and sent to the gulag or the gallows is pretty high. And I've had to really think about that because we know that they're setting stuff up in the United States. And I know a lot of people think it's for the bad guys, but I was telling you, Catherine, off camera, my fear is it's for us. And that
I'm
doesn't
not being rude looking at my phone. Carry on talking. If everyone notices me looking down, it's because I'm bringing up a really important
oh no,
podcast
you're fine.
relates into this. So I just
And
want
I'm not
to,
trying to bring fear
yeah.
up. Just that's something that we have to acknowledge. There is that possibility. And actually it was like this morning, I sat here for a moment and I was like, knowing what I know now, if that were to be the end result, would I have done anything differently? And my answer in my heart was no, because I stood up for what was right. In my opinion, people should be free. And, and if things change and which we're very hopeful they will, and we come into a place of freedom, then I'll be proud of myself, but I will never, and so leaning into the possibility of those consequences, I still wouldn't change anything because I stood up for what was right. And I can leave behind that legacy.
Yeah.
Even within the own truther community, Catherine, we know, I mean, so many people in this community are controlled opposition.
Yeah.
And we've taken hits for pointing that out. And I still wouldn't change anything because at least I was honest and at least I stood in my
Yeah.
integrity. And
I,
whatever the
I
end
so
result is,
agree. When you go against your identity, and what I was looking up on there, because I just wanted to make sure I'll send it to you afterwards. And if people want to look at it, there's a brilliant interview with Roseanne Barr and Lara Logan. I don't know if you've seen it. It's phenomenal. Now, what Lara Logan has been through is unbelievable. All for standing up for, and she's a young mum, she's got young children, she's got dependents, she's got a husband she loved. And it's so easy for people to sort of think it's all right for people like that in that position, but it's not. It's these brave people, whether it's the people in our armed forces, whether it's the firefighters, the ambulance drivers, the people that do speak up, the rare politicians that have really put their necks on the line, the rare doctors that have put their necks on the line, people in our communities that have really stood up and had their voice counted. This is what it means to be human. You know, we're very unique in the animal kingdom in terms of the choices that we've been given. And at the end of the day, the only ones that have really got to live with those choices really on a soul level as ourselves. And we all know when we tune in here whether we're proud. And you don't have to, it doesn't mean you can't make mistakes. It absolutely doesn't. As we've said so many times before, some of the people that we've learnt the most from over the last 4 years are the people that were in the darkest situations, either from birth or coercion or through choice sometimes, who have course corrected and realised there's a different way and are now putting those warning flags out for all the rest of us. So it's never about, in my opinion, I know everyone will have a different opinion about this, and that's fine, about not allowing people to course correct if it's a true, genuine course correction, not a course correction just to save your skins, because there's so many people. I don't think there's one single person that's listening to this that can't think of something they've done in their lives that they're ashamed of.
Well, yeah, it kind of brings me to that place too. You're right, because we've said that before. I find people who have done something bad, whatever that is, and then admitted it and apologized and really showed change. I find those people so attractive.
Yeah,
They're so attractive to me. I want to talk to them. I think they're beautiful for being able to stand in their humanity. And the podcast you were referring to me to, I mean, she talked about even little things. Like I think about
yeah,
how many people made a mistake in a relationship, whether romantic, friendship, familial, whatever, and their pride is so big that they won't actually go through the dread of making that apology.
yeah,
And in that situation, as she was kind of talking about that, like the dread of like they thought they were going to crash in a plane, and that's a totally understandable scenario because you literally have no control in that situation. We've all probably had those flights where there was really bad turbulence, where all those thoughts went through our. I know
yeah.
I've had that flight before where
Me
I
too.
literally thought the plane was going down, um, and you can't control it. You can't. You have no. You can't open the door and run out. You can't. There's no hope. When you're in that situation. And she said something like, "Oh my God, I'm never going to see my daughter get married. I'm never going to meet my grandchildren." And I was thinking about that with like, people who really, excuse my language, but massively fucked up, hurt their partner or their friends or their family. They miss that person, but they don't want to go through the dread of actually contacting that person to try to apologize. And even with us, Catherine, even for people, I mean, we people tried to shut down our business here in Atlanta. People tried to have my authorization revoked
Hmm.
here in Atlanta because of my going against the established narrative. Um, and even in that situation, like if somebody were to come to me and humbly apologize, I would accept the apology. I mean, it would take a while to regain the trust, but I would absolutely accept the apology and move forward. I mean, Kathy O says it best. When people are programmed, you can't really, but it's taking that being having that courage also when it comes to dread, like having that courage to actually face that is what I think creates so much wisdom in a person and what really it's not even so much as the person realizing they messed up and realizing and that missing of the other people that they maybe hurt. But the wisdom really, I think, comes in when they actually make that decision to course correct and to go through that dread of apologizing to someone or whatever it may be that creates that wisdom and that humility within and brings us to that place of vulnerability. And so this topic can go through so many different facets of our life, not just a big global thing that's happening today, but just in our little minuscule things that happen around us, like help us become better people when I think, Catherine, we have this, and I think this is more of like a Western world modern problem, where I think we've kind of talked about this before. I think we're under this delusion that life is supposed to be comfortable, and if it's not comfortable, it's wrong. But no, we grow through discomfort. We grow through that friction. We go through creating that wisdom for leaning into that kind of stuff. And I love how you said that you referred to like in the past, like history, and that thought has occurred to me as well. Like we see so many people, especially in our community, who are like, oh, the good guys are in control. It's fine. It's fine. Nothing like that's ever going to happen. don't you think that maybe the Holocaust survivors think differently?
Mm.
Or the people who survived the Iron Curtain,
Yeah.
communism, maybe were the good guys in control then? So
People in
for us to be,
Gaza, the people,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, for us to be that arrogant, to live in such a comfortable existence where we think any type of discomfort is going to be magically fixed by the divine or by from some superhero is so massively flawed. You know,
Oh,
when we,
completely. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's
oh no,
something
no,
to say. No, I think it's such a good point, and I know it's very hard when you're listening to a video like this. We get it the whole time. I completely get when you're listening, you don't catch all the stuff. You know, you're doing your cooking, you're driving to from work, so you're not listening to everything. But when I'm saying about forgiving, it's about where there's genuine repentance and forgive and regret.
you can tell the
And
difference.
you can tell the difference. And even if someone does do that, you don't need to necessarily accept them back into your life again if they've hurt you. We've talked about this many a time. But if we can't sit down and regain that rationality in our lives, if we've just picked a side so strongly that we're buying into everything that that side does, then we're just falling into the same trap
We're
again.
no
Because
different. We're no
you
different than the
can't,
other side.
no different to the other side. There's not a single person, a single political party, a single corporation that is all completely good or completely bad. You know,
Absolutely.
so many different contributing factors. And I love the fact that you brought up our conversations and the ones she's had with everyone else. Kathy O, you all know
Yeah.
who I'm going to say it once, I don't really care. Kathy O'Brien, because she's amazing. Because she's, you know, when someone's done something in a state of brain control, whether it's severe MK Ultra or all the degrees of programming that come before that, you are not in a rational state of mind. You're not. It's like that's why in most of our justice systems, most of them, not all across the world, you know, until you're over 16 or deemed to be an adult, you're treated differently if you've done something wrong than when you're an adult because
Yeah.
different stages of brain development. And if that has been manipulated by forces outside of yourself so that you're not in control, then it's not you as such doing the action, if that makes sense. So it will probably go a bit round in circles, but I think for me, when I thought about it today, I thought one of the most important things is about understanding when you're feeling that dread or fear or helplessness or whatever that adjective might be for you, to let yourself feel it and then to either use the tools you've got in your toolkit or get help to get some more tools because we all need help, every single one of us at times, to actually say, okay, and now what do I do with this? Because I've just been down this morning to see my 93-year-old neighbour who fell over and broke her shoulder. She's the most toughest, doesn't moan about it. And she was telling me about her life, Bryce. She was born and was a child in the Blitz of the Second World War in London. And I said, well, how was that for you being a child? Because she was old enough to understand what was happening. It wasn't like she was a baby. And she said, yeah, but it's a child. Because I said, have you carried that trauma with you? And she said, no, because as a child, you view things through a very different sense of mind and you'll go with what your parents do. And if your parents are sort of holding it together and telling you just to do this or that, you do that. And she said, no, she said quite the opposite. She said, you know, we all were so resilient and so grateful. And, you know, she had 3 jobs throughout her life, even while she was bringing up her children. And she said, I never felt hard done by for that. I felt lucky to have the jobs.
Yeah. Isn't
You know,
that a
it's the
crazy?
attitude, isn't it?
Yeah. It's that perspective. It's that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then that comes because she was in a place of acceptance. And maybe it was because she
Acceptance.
was a child that it was easier to accept but to be able, I think about that, like, we have so many people like I just said that one of my fears is that if the bad team wins, that I'm going to be taken to the gulag because I have been me and Tucker Carlson and all the other people. The good news is I'm low on the totem pole compared to them. They'll probably go first, but the thing is because I've faced that and I realize that that's a possibility. It's absolutely a possibility. That has allowed us the opportunity to sit down and figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah.
If something like that were to happen, we already have a plan. We already have a plan of where we're going to go because I'm not just going to sit around and wait to be arrested. I'm going to we're going to make a plan. We're going to try to preserve life at all costs. And but if I didn't even entertain or lean into that real possibility of fear, I wouldn't have that plan available to me now. I mean,
Yeah.
today to be honest with you guys, like today, I'm not leaving the house. I'm doing laundry all day, getting everything because I mean, I need to do laundry anyway, but just in case, I just want to make sure we have everything that we need in case we gotta skedaddle. I know
Don't go on the van in dirty knickers, whatever you do, because the Sasquatch will find you. So, but no, in all seriousness, getting humour into it, because with people watching this, everyone's situation watching this will be different, and allow yourself to feel what you're feeling for your situation. We've spoken quite a lot, haven't we? That, grief, fear, it's not a competition.
no.
You're allowed to feel what you are allowed to feel, and then you can decide what you want to do about it. But don't just suppress your feelings about that. And look at how sometimes our best learning is to look at how other people that we don't respect, how they're handling the situation, and sort of say, what can I learn from this? What
Absolutely.
can I do differently that will be not only just for my greater benefit, but also for the collective's greater benefit.
100%. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. And we'll say a little humor. I will say it, definitely the fear I'm feeling. I definitely have a lot of more respect for the big celebrities who have because they're under way more pressure than I am as a little tiny content creator, So my respect for those and for the T family, the fear that
Oh,
they're under right now. They're
yeah.
not. If they won't let the. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but the reality is, if things don't go the way we want it to go, for sure they're not going to let that family live, for sure. And I think they know that, And so having that respect for other people who have put themselves in these vulnerable positions in order to help make the world a better place,
Yeah,
you
like
know.
every single serviceman, ambulance driver,
Yeah,
fireman. I'm saying man, I hope everyone realizes person, but I can't
yeah,
be able to say that. That's just what we say.
yeah.
But every single person who's done those services, however big or small, it really counts, and you are making a difference. So, I think when we're looking at the division now, for me, the overriding messages, my realization for whatever it works, take it or leave it, folks, is that we've put far too much of our energy and attention onto some of these events. I'm not saying two things can be true. I'm not saying they're not important, but we can't keep pouring all our energy and intention into it, because actually the people that are getting out and growing their own food, I heard of some of the conversation, not all of it, that you and Tamara did over on your Rumble channel, and look at the Amish community.
Yeah,
They've chosen and they've been out living their own life,
yeah.
doing it their way, and now they've realized that they need to take a different action to
Take
what
action.
they need to, and then hopefully afterwards they'll go back to living their life they want to be. That to me is a perfect example. Don't stop living your life. Keep your wits about you. Keep your critical thinking. When you need to step out of your normal path and take some different action, bloody well do it, and then get back to living your life as you decide you want to do it, so long as you're not harming anyone else.
I love you brought the Amish up because that's such a great example. Yeah, I mean, we make fun of the Amish because they live like it's the 1800s.
I'd love to
You know,
do that. I want to join.
I mean, but I will tell you, if you're ever in an area in an Amish community, you definitely want to stop by their store because they have the best food. They have the best fudge. Because they're using their own products. They're homegrown. Their milk is not pasteurized. It's coming straight from the cow. So everybody always wants Amish food. My nose is itching, so that means the truth. But yeah, and they live, and because of the United States, it's a religious choice for them to live without electricity and to still drive a horse and buggy. And you're right, they haven't just because they decided that it's gotten bad enough where they're going to have to take action and actually register to vote and vote. Still hasn't stopped them. They still go back to their farms
I
and they're
think that's
taking
a
their action.
perfect analogy.
Yeah,
I
Those
don't
Amish
know
men.
enough about it, so don't shoot me down for this because I'm not American. I've never physically been and seen how they live, so I don't know the pros and cons of it. I'm just saying from my superficial understanding, it's what's on my vision board. It's my idea of heaven. I don't need electricity. Horse and carts are my thing, trust me. Mucking out stables. This 93-year-old lady, beautiful lady, my neighbour, I just want to say she was telling me that her mother had 6 children. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And she made all their own clothes. She made every meal from scratch.
Just
She
like the
made their
Amish.
wedding cake. This woman sounded like a miracle worker, and I was speaking to my neighbour, and I said, Joy, was she? Oh, she loved it. She said she
Yeah.
wasn't. She knew how to do all this. She knew how to do it. She took it. What we're capable of. We've got that it's normal of spending a time in front of a computer and doing these things. We're so creative. We've got so many talents if we want to. This was normal to be able to do all
Yeah.
that stuff. And they weren't sitting there thinking, oh, I feel really hard done by because I haven't got time to go to the gym. They don't need to go to the gym. Trust me,
Their,
they're
I know their life is the we have to go to the gym to create the friction. They already
exactly
have it
their
with their
life
life. With
is.
the Amish. The Amish don't have gyms. They just work the land. And I next time you're here, Catherine, we'll go. I've only seen the Amish one time. I was in Ohio and I got stuck behind a buggy once, and it was the wildest thing even for me to be stuck behind a horse and buggy. But I'll let you guys to the Amish. They still speak. It's a form of Dutch, I believe, or German,
Right.
from where their ancestors come from. But you guys, the people have migrated over here to the United States back when it was being colonized. I mean, that was hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
They still refer to people outside of their community as the English.
I love it. You see things like this, I just love it. And I don't think they're insulting people by doing it.
No,
I just
that's how they differentiate between them and their little Dutch German communities and their religious beliefs. But in the outside world, it's him as the English. I mean, because
But we all say we can't go back from technology. We say all these excuses, they're just excuses, folks.
yeah,
There are people all over the world. Now, a lot of them are living in terrible circumstances.
yeah.
A lot. The vast majority of the world's population are living in terrible circumstances compared to all of us. But we think that we can't do without these things, and we absolutely can. Now, I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not saying we can't hold on to the bits that serve us, but perhaps today of all days is the perfect opportunity for us all to really take stock and for once be honest with ourselves and say, how much of my modern lifestyle is serving me and is serving others around me of all creatures, great and small.
Oh, absolutely. Well, again, back to childhood. I think we had in my child, probably your childhood too, Catherine. It was perfect because we did have technology. We had the TV, we had a landline, we had
Yeah.
cars, but we didn't have digital programming. We had to watch the show when it came on TV, when it was you got it, the TV guide that you could find when the shows were going
Yes.
to come on. And if you missed it, you missed it. You just had to wait for the rerun.
And you
I
got
know
really excited on Christmas time because you'd get the programs 2 weeks in advance and you'd all go and circle what you wanted to be in for and watch. Yeah.
I mean, I know you guys do your commercials a little bit differently in the UK, but in America, our commercials, like every 5 to 10 minutes, they'll play a
No, we don't
commercial.
have that. Yeah.
Well, you'd be watching a show with your siblings and you have to pee really bad. You're like having to pee, and the commercials come on, so you would rush to the toilet peeing, and then you
Yeah.
hear a sibling yell, "It's coming back
Yeah.
on!" You have to quickly like finish, but I think that was great because because we didn't have everything at the touch of our fingers. We were forced to play outside. We
Yeah.
were forced to climb trees. We were forced to actually pick the phone up and call. I remember having to call my friends before cell phones. We called their landline. You dial the number or the circle rotary phone, and then if their parent came on the phone, you would have to speak to their parent. Hello, Miss Thomas. Is such and such there? Yes, I'm fine. School's going. Like you would have to actually have
Yeah.
a conversation with their parent too. And so you learned respect because whoever answered the phone up, you would have to talk to them
We
for a minute
didn't
before.
need takeaway coffees or tea. We
No,
never had one. I mean, when I was
it
a
didn't have that.
teenager, I'm not that old, but once
Never.
we had the money, and we'd never thought of going and getting a takeaway tea or coffee. You ate healthily because you didn't have all these fast food
Right.
places. And if you did, you were in the middle of the woods instead of doing. So what I would say is restock. There's people living in America like the Amish There will be people living in other communities, in other countries, that have stepped back in time, that have stepped away from the rat race life and seem to be doing, in general, I don't know all about it, I'm sure there's issues, but pretty well in a lot of respects. And therefore, for us to keep telling ourselves that we haven't got a choice and we're trapped in that system, I think it's V for Vendetta all over again. I think we've put those traps around ourselves far more than they have to be.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Amish children. I will be careful how I say this, but they've done studies on the Amish children versus the English children. And when they say English, yep, when they say English, they mean black people too.
Yeah.
Anybody, it's just outside. They don't get these at
No.
all. They don't use modern healthcare. They have their babies at home with midwives.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and I'm not saying go to that extreme, you know, but there's some truth that they're not doing this. The
Yeah.
kids are not on technology. They're being fed homemade food. They don't go to McDonald's. They're getting fed homemade food every single meal from their garden, you know, and so there's some truth to the fact that these children are the healthiest children in America because they're just
Yeah.
living how they're supposed to be living. More resembles how we lived. And you're right.
Yeah.
I was laughing. You know, now it's in vogue now for kids when they go to school here in America to bring thermoses of water with them.
Yeah.
And somebody posted, I don't even think I drank water until I was at college. I'm like,
no, this is what I mean. It all sparked. Now I have to laugh because I get the pee taken out of me the whole time because I take my water bottle with me everywhere. But again, it was ridiculous, this excess that we have to do it. And yes, there are lessons learned. I'm not pretending everything was hunky-dory. There were higher mortality rates in certain areas, but not in the ones we've got now with the chronic diseases, the depression, the unhappiness and everything. So a reset can be really good. Not their reset, our reset.
Our own reset.
You have to take responsibility for your reset.
And I'll laugh, Catherine. I have my water here. It's in an old Subway cup, but it's water as well. So yeah, yeah, we drink from the water fountain.
It's actually gin, but no one really knows that. Sometimes
that
I feel like
later today.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens? I might be getting into the rum and the.
But let us know below. In all seriousness, folks, we want to know what would you be happy to let go of? What realization has everyone had? And I've had loads recently. Trust me, I've got a lot. What restrictions are we putting in? And actually, what would happen if we all did our own resets? Because it's like everything. If we don't do it, they're going to do it for us. So how can we take more responsibility for getting back on track to be great stewards of this planet and to be nicer people to live around without this huge division in so many different areas of society? Live and let live a lot more. You know, what are your suggestions? And let's really focus on those perhaps.
And can I ask, I know this is on your channel, so let me know. I want to hear too, Catherine, when we talk about leaning into things, I want to hear from our audience, like if you want to share, it's totally up to you, obviously. What's something in your life that was really hard for you to accept, something that was tough to accept but you accepted it, you leaned into it? I want to hear how you were able to do that. Like, what can you share with us? What helped you lean into something and what you learned from that experience?
Love it.
I'd love to hear that from you guys, because sharing is caring, right? Secrets are no fun. Secrets are for everyone. We want to hear in your story, whether it was a sickness or a divorce, whatever, something that you actually allowed yourself to lean into it and accept it for what it is, what you learned from that and where it got you. I'd love to hear that from
yeah, let us know and then we can carry that on. So next week we will be back on Bryce's channel. Are we going to do one on Thursday?
Well, I'm hoping we'll do something on Thursday. We'll see.
So Thursday we will be on Esoteric Atlanta. So come and join us there and we'll keep an eye on the comments. And if there's anything that you want us to follow up on, put it in the comments below and we'll make sure we cover that on Thursday.
We'll keep the topic open-ended since this is a crazy situation we're in. We'll just kind of keep the topic open-ended and see how you guys, you know. So, yeah.
Brilliant.
All right.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We will be back.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.